have you as attending the meeting. We promise we won't stare at you too much. We appreciate you attending remotely while you are isolating. So I'll begin the meeting by acknowledging the traditional owners, and we do this in language as part of our commitment to the Uluru Statement from the Heart and to voice treaty and truth. Nala kadich wajak mort kain kadak nija walilap buja, where jinang wajak kadajin, where knitting ula ye. So we acknowledge the Whadjuk people as the traditional owners of the greater Fremantle-Wallilap area, and we recognise that their cultural and heritage beliefs are still important today. For our attendance and apologies and leaves of absence, we have Councillor Sullivan on a leave of absence. We have Councillor Kamada on has submitted an apology, and Councillor Lang also recently submitted an apology. I will assume there are no disclosures of interest by members, but it may be an assumption that you would wish to correct, given it's a budget meeting. So if anyone has any disclosures, now would be the time. Nope. So it's going to take us through to public question time. Those of you who haven't spoken in public question time before, I'll let you know that you have 3 minutes. We'll put a timer on and give you a bit of a wave as those 3 minutes are getting close to elapsing. You need to come up and use the microphone because this meeting is recorded and it is broadcast. So we also do that for our agendas and minutes, but it's just important that you speak into that microphone if you can. So I've got 4 people listed to speak, starting with Alex Wallish. Alex?
Hi there. I think this is on. Just in relation to the rate increases, the question is landlords of empty shops in the CBD, from my opinion, should pay more, not less, in rates. I guess the concern is that there will be no incentive for people to lease out those shops if those rates are lower. That's the comment, and I guess a question in there as well. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'm sure that'll be addressed during the discussion tonight if you want to stay. Vicky Helps.
Good evening. I'd like to speak to the same issue. I would just like to make a comment. My comment is that everyone should have the same rate rise. It feels to me we are creating an inequality that is unacceptable, and particularly so in a period of rising cost of living pressures. The ever-increasing gap between those that have and those that have not should not be reflected in this unfair rate rise. In campaign speeches during the mayoral election, one catch cry was that Fremantle would be kind. I don't believe there can be any kindness without fairness, and I ask you to seriously consider the fairness, the kindness and the justice in this unequal rate rise. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicky. And Terry McKee.
Good evening, guys. 2 small issues, just one with regards to the rate rise and then the other one was in regards to the underground power in Hilton. Good evening. I am speaking on behalf of myself and my family and several of our neighbours on Nicholas Crescent in Hilton. Their proposed rate rise to residents while giving the commercial CBD landlords a discount is ridiculous and insulting. We all understand that the city of Fremantle has taken a hit over COVID, but pushing such an immense rate rise on its community, who are already doing it tough with the current increases to the cost of living, shows a council who is completely out of touch and lazy and unimaginative. Commercial business owners are already able to offset the rates they pay at a loss through their taxes, meaning they would be able to double dip their savings. We need to get people back to the CBD, and rewarding the landlords who actively choose to keep these buildings empty with financial incentives is both ridiculous and not going to work. A quick look online shows our capital city council, the City of Perth, only proposing a 1% increase, so it puts into perspective how outrageously unimaginative the City of Fremantle are being. The City of Perth would have most definitely suffered a greater loss than Fremantle, with the lack of tourists due to COVID, and they are still only proposing a basically non-existent rate rise. Interestingly, the town of Basildine has the 22-23 budget meeting proposed a higher rate increase for vacant property landowners to encourage more development, therefore proving to Fremantle that this is an idea that can work. I would also like to formally object to the change of the underground power service charge to the residents of Hilton. We were originally sold a promise that the financial contributions of the Hilton residents towards this scheme would be fair. However, we have now discovered a proposal to charge those who have already the service and charge interest on this. We are one of those families who have already paid for the service privately at about $4,500. When the decision to convert Hilton to underground power was first announced on the Facebook Hilton Hub by local resident and now Deputy Mayor Frank Moughlin, he personally responded to questions from ourselves and others whether or not those who had already paid for the service would have to pay anything again, and he assured us that there would be no charge. He also noted that at the same time Western Power is undertaking these works in Hilton, they are also doing the same in Shelley, in the city of Canning, and that Fremantle is receiving a far greater financial contribution from the Western Power at 7 million, while Canning is only receiving 3.58 million for the same cost of works. It should be noted that the City of Canning are only proposing the increase residential rates by 4.65%. With the previous meeting increases in the cost of living and a proposed rate increase of 6.5%, this extra increase to a service none of us even asked for is much like the rate rise and another kick in the guts. Although this one is more of the through the back door, sneak in at the last minute, and hopefully they won't notice it until it's too late. And we are very grateful to our member for the Hilton Board, Ben Lawyer, for keeping us residents informed in these matters.
Thank you, Terry. I think the issues about rates are going to be well addressed during the meeting. I do want to get the Director to clarify on the Hilton Underground Power issue, because I think you've got some information there that's not up to date.
Thank you, through the chair. So the setup with the Hilton Underground Power Scheme is that Western Power will pay for all the charges up to and including the Green Dome. The connection charges are for residents that then move from the Green Dome to the mains. If residents already have that have a Green Dome in, and there's no additional charge because they don't need to do anything, they just connect to the existing Green Dome. So there is no charge for existing conversions from the dome to the building. And on top of that, there are also no interest charges being applied either.
I can't. We can't really enter into the debate. I'm sorry, from the gallery. So we're happy to engage further on it tomorrow. But I just wanted to make sure we weren't going forward with people not being up to speed on that. The final question is from Mark Woodcock.
Good evening. I had questions on notice. Is the procedure still the same? You want the copied paper, or was the email I sent earlier okay?
The email's fine.
Okay. I just wanted to ask two quick questions though. We still haven't received the City of Fremantle's audited financials from 2020 to 21, unless it's been put up recently. That is over 7 months later than normal. And I'm just wondering why it's taking so long. When I call the Auditor General, they say they're working on it, but they need documentation or information. Surely we would have all the information almost 2 years later.
I can certainly ask the CEO to respond on that and to tell you we share your frustrations in this regard. So, thanks.
All right, and the other one, which I realise we're waiting for the audited report to come through, but when will the annual general electors meeting be called? If you look back to 2017, we had it around December, and we're now in July. You need so much time to call it, so we're August or September, or will we just do 2 at December?
I'll get the CEO to respond to those if you've finished, Mr. Woodcock. Thanks.
Thank you, through the chair. So the city is waiting for the audit report to be finalised by the Office of the Auditor General. We, like everyone else, eagerly anticipating that to arrive. Under the Local Government Act, we can't actually call the annual general meeting until we receive our audit report. There is a process. There is a process under the Act to undertake the annual general meeting. It has to happen once we've got the audit report. It has to happen within 2 months.
Thank you very much. So I haven't had notice of any petitions. I wouldn't expect one at a special council meeting. We'll see what we get next week. Elected member communication, likewise. No communication. Councillor Thompson, you wanted to say something tonight? Or?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to from time to time I give a council some information on what is happening with the Resource Recovery Group, otherwise known as the SMRC. So I just thought I'd give a very brief update of where we're at. At our last meeting, the Resource Recovery Group resolved to seek approval from member councils to upgrade and improve our establishment agreement. The establishment agreement is the agreement amongst member councils that was originally set up when the regional council was first formed. Two main issues in the change are that up till now, members have been able to withdraw from the regional council projects by simply giving a year's notice. In the past, little consideration has been given by withdrawing members to the impact on other regional council members. This problem is not just simply one of the Resource Recovery Group. It's been a problem for all regional councils. So what council is proposing is that any change to that, any change for a member to withdraw will mean that any future withdrawal can only take place with the approval of a majority of members. In the case of the Resource Recovery Group, this would mean that 2 of the 3 members would be required to vote to allow a member to withdraw. The other major change, if approved by all 3 member councils, remember these changes have to actually be approved by the members, is that we will increase the number of councillors on the Resource Recovery Group to 6, with 2 members from each council able to be nominated. That has proved difficult with just three members at the moment, and if one of us is away, it makes it difficult. I would also like to inform members that the group is finalising the details of a 5-year lease for part of our what is now redundant processing floor, and that's going to be leased to a plastic reprocessing company, Cherry Australia. They will be setting up a facility to reprocess plastic for a variety of uses. Once operational, this will be the first significant reprocessing of plastics in WA, and the Resource Recovery Group is pleased to be leading the way once again in helping to contribute to the circular economy. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Excellent news. Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Lorber.
Oh, thank you, Mayor and everyone. I just wanted to read something that was sent to me by someone who couldn't be here this evening, if I may. And they wanted to have their statement entered into the debate, and it was via Facebook.
That is probably stretching standing orders, so I'll let you do it tonight, but I'll just put it on note that reading out other people's statements is probably not elected member communication, but for tonight, go for it.
Okay, it's really short. They just said, my name is Andrea Callahan at 47 Colleague Street. I had underground electricity installed when I subdivided my block about 12 years ago. I hope it's not going to cost me more. I'm single, and the financial crisis with increasing rates with the banks is starting to hurt big time. Can this text be used as my voice against an increased rates for residents? It's better to have an equal rate raise for residents and businesses in Frio, I think. That's it.
Thank you. Okay, so that's going to take us through to reports and recommendations from officers. So what we've done, and there's been a fair bit of back and forth over the last few days on email clarifying various points. We've put together, the officers have put together an amended officer recommendation. I'm going to ask for that to be brought up on the screen now so we can see it. You've seen it via email, but you've seen it in response to different emails. So I just want to get it up so that we can see all the different elements that you might have seen in the additional documents. So perhaps we can scroll down a bit. Yeah, perhaps I'll get either the director or the CEO just to walk through the changes.
Through the Mayor. So starting off with the first change that you can see at the moment, we've just made a minor change with the rating recommendation to note the submissions received. That's just a small change in relation to compliance with the Act. If you scroll through to the next one. This is in relation to the underground power service charges. So the first part of this is we have removed the reference to the interest charge of 4% in acknowledgement that we did communicate externally previously that we weren't going to charge that interest. So we're removing that from the recommendation. We have also made a minor change to the terminology in the charge types for the underground power service charge.
So I'll just ask if elected members have any questions or queries on that. And I'll just also note that 12A has been amended following a great pickup from Councillor Lorber that, that we'd communicated that there wouldn't be interest payable. So appreciate the attention to detail there. So the officer's recommendation that I'll be moving now reflects the that change. So Councillor Lorber may still want to add the words from his amendment, but the effect is the same through the amended officer's recommendation. So then questions or clarifications on what I'm now moving as the amended officer recommendation? Yeah, Councillor Mofflin.
Yeah, and just to confirm, to go back to the director's point, so if someone's already connected to underground power, there are no charges for those residents already connected.
Thank you. Through the chair, if a resident has already got a green dome and is connected, and that is connected to the households, there's no connection charge in respect to that. The cut and cap meter charge relates to multiple meter dwellings, and theoretically you could have somebody that has a connection underneath, but then has externally a meter for multiple dwellings. That charge relates to Western Power taking that out prior to the box. So that's the only minor change. But essentially, if they've already paid and have a connection, a green box, a green dome, and a connection to the household, there is no charge from Western Power.
Councillor Lorber?
So just one point of clarification. So will every house get some sort of charge? Because the way that that's read is that they'll be charged for one, the other, or both. So will there be any houses in the area that don't have any charges applied to them?
There will be houses that don't have any charges applied to them.
I suppose just in terms of the words used here, being no greater than the charges specified below, i.e., zero would be a possible outcome. Comfortable with that?
Yeah, and I suppose just to clarify for me as well, like in 12A, it refers to affected properties. So affected properties, I understand that to be those who are making the connection. Unaffected properties, I'm assuming, are those who are not making a connection. So if there's a lack of clarity, maybe only just the inclusion around B, around affected property owners, if it was felt it wasn't clear, but I think it's pretty clear.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I think the change is necessary, but if anyone felt it was, it would be a very minor amendment. So speak up now. Councillor Grimm, did you want to speak? Your light went on and off.
I was just going to suggest that replacing may with will would also fix the problem.
All right, so if I'm going to move this as an officer's recommendation, perhaps we can just change may to, where is it? Will to may in B. And I'll move that as the amended officer's recommendation, and then I'll ask for a seconder. Councillor Archibald will second that. We'll just wait till it gets up on the screen. We're pretty close. Councillor Graham, just checking in that you're able to still follow along at home. Give me a thumbs up. Excellent. Glad to hear. Okay, so we've got the amended officer recommendation up on the screen here. So we'll move into debate and any other proposed amendments. Councillor Archibald? Yes. Oh, yeah, it's a really good point. Welcome back from holidays, Mayor. Yeah, thanks. All right. Well, no, sorry, Councillor Archibald, I was moving the amended officer recommendation. So you're seconding the amended officer recommendation to open debate. Am I correct? Yeah, so we're in debate now. We're not moving an amendment, I'm just moving that as the original motion. No, I'm moving that. So I'm proposing to move an amended initial motion. We're good? You confused me. Okay, thank you. So to speak now on the motion to adopt the budget. Anyone wish to speak on it? We'll go straight to amendments. So we've got some amendments by Councillor Lorver that he may want to move, and an amendment by Councillor Pemberton as well. So, Councillor Lorver.
Great. Can we move the First Amendment?
Do you have a seconder? Councillor Thompson seconding the First Amendment. Over to you.
Great. Well, I just want to thank everyone who came tonight and those who sent their thoughts in by other means. And I guess, what I'm hoping for and what we can accomplish tonight is that if we need to raise rates, that we do so in a way that just isn't so lopsided. It's not just myself that feels this way, because I've made a serious effort to reach out and discuss with folks and businesses in these past few weeks to really gauge how people feel about what's been put before us. And, I've proactively door knocked houses, talking to folks in Hilton, Sampson, and O'Connor, visited dozens of businesses around, the O'Connor and Hilton area. And in fact, found a nice little shop that makes custom boots. And my wife has a new pair of UGG boots that are custom made for her birthday. So, but unilaterally, I have yet to find anyone, when I explained what was happening with this budget proposal, that was enthusiastically supportive or even just supportive of it. So what I'm proposing with this First Amendment is actually quite simple. Is that we fund everything that we want to do. We fund all the programs that are going to help our city center thrive. We start fixing our footpaths. We start doing all the things that the city needs to have done, but we do it in a way that impacts everyone equally, or more equally, I guess, than what's being proposed. We're supposed to be the level of government closest to the people, and the one thing that kind of struck me when I was talking to folks was it wasn't really that. I wasn't surprised that people weren't supportive of having such a large increase, while some folks were going to have an actual literal decrease in the rates. But it was more, the response was, what can we do? People just thought, oh, well, we're just going to have to pay it. And so I was just really kind of struck by that. And I thought, well, there are things that we can do. And that's, hopefully taken care of in this amendment in one way. So I'll just put it on the table, let people have their say and their thoughts, and we can debate it.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson as seconder. Do you wish to speak?
Just to say, I'll repeat what I've said I think over a number of times we've debated this, that the reasons for the differential rate I don't buy, and I'm not convinced by them. So for that reason, I'm supporting this recommendation.
Thank you. Councillors. Councillor Pemberton.
I have a question. I don't really understand the point just made by Councillor Thompson in particular, but we still have differential rates, so I don't understand the statement.
Is it a question, or would you like to also speak now on your...
I'm happy to speak on the
Thank you.
amendment before us, yes. It does baffle me a bit, this narrative that has been developed, and because, you know, looking at the figures that are being proposed by the amendment, and while there's another version that has slight variation and so on, the proposal is to maintain the differential rate. So Councillor Thompson, as I understood his comment just then, alluded to the idea of not having differential rates, just provide like doing a straight, even spread across the whole entire community. Now, I would actually be more supportive of that than what is before us in the amendment. You know, I think it would potentially be detrimental in future to take away the differential rate as a general kind of way of approaching things. But this kind of strange tweak, I mean, the idea that there is a discount to CBD businesses is completely false. It's just an untrue statement. Even in the proposal, in the amendment and so on, you know, we're talking of, like, the residents are paying the lowest rate in the dollar out of all of the groups. And in the proposal, we're sort of talking about a change from 8.9 cents to 9 cents in the dollar for residents. And we're talking about a discussion about 9.8 cents and 10.3 cents for CBD commercial. So even in those metrics, you know, the CBD commercial are paying higher rates than the residents. The idea that they're getting a discount is just ridiculous. You know, their increase is not as high as others, but they are still paying more. They are paying more because they pay more in the dollar, but they are also paying more because their properties are valued at more. So this weird narrative that CBD businesses are going to pay less than residents is just absolute rubbish, and it's driving me bonkers, to tell you the truth. And the other thing is, and this is probably more to the general kind of idea of a rate rise in itself, which is, you know, I am a resident too. I pay rates too, in fact, on 2 properties. So, you know, this hurts me as well. And like, I really feel the pain that is being expressed by residents, because I'm going to cop this as well. And that is challenging for me, as it is with everybody else. I do acknowledge that, you know, the cost of living is rising for everybody. I mean, I'm kind of astounded by the increase in the cost of veggies at Galates, which, you know, has always been so affordable and now is like challenging. But also, what people need to understand is that the city needs to pay more for everything that we do. Just to maintain the current baseline of what we're doing, it's going to cost more. And of course, you know, speaking to kind of some of the feedback that came back from the submissions and the people's desire for us to make sure that we've got a good level of service and good sort of standard of maintenance within our facilities, you know, we cannot do that without raising the rates, because those things are costing more now than they did last year or the year before and so on. And just like those people who are saying, don't raise rates but improve the maintenance of the city, you know, the reality is that we're going to need a little bit more money to be able to do that. And as much as it hurts me as a resident who pays rates, I acknowledge that we are going to need to do that because it is for the collective good of our city, and it is something that we will all benefit from in the long run. Specifically to the amendment, I won't be supporting it because I do think we need to adjust the degree to which the differential rate penalises CBD businesses more than everybody else, and it is about sort of starting to bring that, like, shorten that gap. That is all that it's about. It is not about giving discounts to CBD businesses. It's about recognising that they don't necessarily get that much extra than everybody else in our community.
Thank you, Councillor Pemberton. Councillor Groom.
Yeah, probably similar sentiment. When I scan our local papers and our social media, and when I talk to residents, the kind of top 2 or 3 things on people's list is businesses closing in the CBD and the state of our infrastructure and our sporting grounds, and what a disgrace council's service delivery is. Well, it's not for free. It's not going to fall out of the sky. All of the price costs that we're all enduring, council endures, and the cost of veggies have gone up, but the cost of building and of labour and so forth have gone up astronomically more, like 30 and 50% more. So even with this rate rise, we are still going to struggle to do our normal business and our 10-year plan to get our infrastructure back to the standard we want it in. But the thing that's bugged me the whole time I've been on council is that whilst everyone wants the CBD to thrive, we think that somehow businesses in the CBD, who on the whole in Fremantle are small businesses, it's one of the charms of our CBD is that we have independent shop operators. We're not dealing with the corporate chains, creative industries, all sorts of dynamic industries, many of whom the owners live in our community themselves, that are trying to operate small businesses in our CBD. Now, on the current rate structure and parking charges and all the other things that go on with being in the CBD, it's not worth it. They would just move out to somewhere else in Fremantle or somewhere else because there's too much of a penalty to be in the city. So if we are serious about invigorating our CBD, we have to at least create a level playing field for our businesses across the entire city. And that's what this does. It is no discount. 0.98 cents in the dollar is not less than 0.9 cents in the dollar for residents. So, I think this is a fantastic compromise that achieves that goal, recognises the city's aspiration, and that's not just the aspiration of the 13 people in this chamber, it's the constant noise we hear from our community about what they want this city heart to be like. So someone else kind of flagged the issue of vacant. So we have an extraordinary differential rate for vacant land. So if you are sitting on vacant and commercial land in the city of Fremantle, you pay double than if you're sitting on undeveloped land. And if you're sitting on vacant residential land, you pay another 60 or 70%. So we are trying to drive and signal through our rates what it is we want for the city. I don't want to leverage a rate rise any more than anyone in this room. No one puts their hand up to come and sit at this table and apply that kind of rate rise, but it would be irresponsible for me and for the assets that are in our control and to manage to do any other outcome. So I won't be supporting the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Groom. Councillors, Councillor Moughlin.
Thank you, and thanks to everyone who's made a contribution already to the discussion. And I suppose when I was thinking about this particular amendment, it took me back to when I first thought about running for council and the challenge of thinking about Fremantle both as a CBD, Fremantle as a residential area, and Fremantle with an extensive commercial base as well. And that's certainly one of the challenges that I think we face as elected members, to be able to think about all of those parts of Fremantle, all being parts of Fremantle, and all those parts which we love and admire and make this place what we want it to be. Just to pick up on a few points that Councillor Lorver spoke to, I acknowledge that he is not proposing that the actual total amount of revenue, or his amendment isn't proposing that the total amount of revenue that the city brings in is reduced, but that it is the way in which it is rated across the differential rate categories is different to what's proposed by the officers. But yes, similarly to Councillor Pempton and Councillor Groom, note that CBD businesses pay 8.5% greater in the rate in the dollar. So for every, for their rates, 8.5% greater than residents in Fremantle. And whilst there are comments that go around in regards to Fremantle having lazy landlords and the like who leave their buildings empty. If you go for a walk in any other CBD in Perth, you walk down Hay Street in Subiaco, you go through the CBD in Perth, there are vacant buildings. Now, if someone wants to, I'm not seeing a great line of people who are thinking it's a great idea for them to be leaving their buildings empty. And whilst there is, certainly there might be some who use it for a tax benefit or don't manage their businesses as greatly as some others might, most of those people want to get tenants in their shops. And talking to both tenants and landlords, the way in which rates are structured, they're an outgoing for those businesses. So those people-facing businesses, those shop fronts, which we all go into, they are the ones who are paying the rates. So for me, if this small change that we are proposing to bring those rates closer together, still noting 8.5% difference between residential and CBD commercial, may provide an incentive for a new business to open, or may help another business to function differently or better in Fremantle, then I'm fully supportive of that. I just want to also pick up on another point that Councillor Lawver made as well, and the point about doing rates equally. Thinking about this, we could go and flatten our rate structure and remove differential rates altogether. I haven't done the numbers, but that could actually possibly mean that residents pay more than what we're paying now. And it would be an interesting exercise to see what that would look like. And finally, I suppose, to speak to the driver when we first had the conversation in regards to taking out an element of the destination marketing, which was being part of the differential rate in the first instance. And I think, for me, philosophically, if we can't identify the residents/ratepayers who benefit from a service, then that is definitely something that needs to be spread across the entirety of the rate base. I'm not going to be going and asking a resident and say, do you use our local parks? And if they say no, then we subtract their maintenance of the parks from their rates. So I think there is an element of us contributing to those outcomes for Fremantle as a whole, and I won't be supporting the amendment.
Thanks, Councillor Moughlin. Councillor Archibald.
Thank you.
It is. You might just want to move it a little closer. Thank you.
Sorry. Yes, I agree with the comments that Councillor Moughlin has just made, likewise my colleagues on either side here, that the reason we considered this in the very first instance was because the differential rate had been imposed several years ago. I can't remember how many years ago. 20? No, when they set up destination marketing. Yeah, 2013, with a very specific task to fund marketing for the CBD businesses. We no longer do that. That money is we now invest that money across the whole city to promote the city. So this is one of the main reasons that we have said we need to bring this back to something that is equitable across the board. And so just in relation to one of the comments made by one of the residents, this in fact will make it more equitable. That said, the amount of money we're talking about per business, I just hope it is enough to make a difference. It's not going to be a massive amount to them, but it is more about, I think, creating a more level playing field in terms of how that money is raised and what it is actually now being used for, as distinct from what it was used for. So for me, it is more about that than anything else. So I certainly support the officer's recommendation, and I'm sorry I can't support this amendment. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Archibald. Councillors, any further speakers on Councillor Lawver's amendment? Perhaps if I just make a couple of points, and then Councillor Lawver can close. I think, I won't be supporting the amendment, and most of the reasons others have given have articulated that really well. A couple of other things, I guess, just to understand. Rates are paid as an outgoing by business owners. 80% of business owners in the CBD are local people who live in Hilton and Sampson and Beaconsfield and South Freo and everywhere else. So these are the same businesses that will, they've struggled with tourism being down. We all try and shop locally and we all try and do the right things and buy our loved ones gifts from local shops. But with tourism down, it's been incredibly hard, particularly in the CBD. Suburbs, in some cases, have actually benefited from the whole COVID situation because they've had more people working from home. And that means more people buying coffee at Charlie's or whatever, we do when we work from home. So it has been harder for CBD businesses. And to continue this, effectively what's been a levy on them, which is what we're really sort of talking about tonight, seems really unfair when in fact we all benefit from marketing Fremantle as a great place to work, to live and to play. So I won't be supporting the amendment. I think this is a very small thing that we're doing for CBD businesses by removing this levy, but they do still pay a higher rate than residents under the differential rates, and they will continue to. If we were to go to a system of single rate, I think that's an interesting proposal, but it would mean that vacant residential land and vacant commercial and industrial land would pay exactly the same as you do, which I don't necessarily think I'd be supporting. So an interesting thought experiment, but one that we're not doing through this budget. Councillor Lawver, you wanted to close?
Yeah, first of all, I just want to be clear. I've never suggested that everyone pays the same rate, a flat rate across the board. I don't know where that's come up from. That's not something I've ever put forward in any means. But I just want to also say a couple things, because what we're debating right now represents about $400,000 worth of funding, and it's a relatively minor part of this overall budget. So on the vast majority of things, I think we're all pretty much on the same page. We all want to see Fremantle do well. I think we all want to face the challenges. We want to do things that are going to see our city grow. But the fact of the matter is that this differential rate for CBD businesses have been in a long time. And I find myself in the odd kind of, I don't know, in a difficult position for myself, because normally I'm out there advocating for change and to make positive changes. And here I am just advocating to maintain the status quo. Maintain the status quo of budgets that many of you in this chamber have voted on in years past. Maintain the status quo because this differential rate, it does more than just pay for destination marketing, which I'll also just add that everyone in the city also contributes to that right now as well. It's not exclusively funded by these businesses. It's not mostly funded by these businesses. Everyone in the city chips in for these programs, and I think most people are happy to do that because we do want to see things happen. But the reason for the slightly higher differential rate for CBD businesses, as said by the city last year, is the object of this rate is to ensure that a reasonable contribution is made towards the higher costs and facilities associated with these properties, such as increased service requirements, maintenance requirements, transport links, additional costs associated with economic development initiatives and marketing, but then with a contribution to the city's destination marketing activities as per the plan. So this slightly higher rate that raises slightly more than 400K pays for a reasonable contribution for all those things. And I'm not proposing that we slash any of these programs. I'm literally just saying that we should maintain the status quo. But I'd like to take just a moment to talk about how approving the officer recommendation will actually impact the businesses in the CBD, because we've heard a fair bit about helping mom and pop and helping all these people out. But when you actually look at the impacts, you might be kind of surprised, because there are about 18% of the businesses in the CBD, about 76. If you look on page 10 of the budget documents, or it might be page 9, literally, they're paid the minimum rates. So almost 20% of the businesses in the CBD are going to see a 6% increase in the rates. They're going to pay $84 more under this proposal. They're not going to pay anything less. The next little bit, you've got businesses with a GRV, let's say less than 30K. They're going to have a rates bill next year that's going to be $10.35 lower next year than they did this year. Lower. So I don't know how that can be described as anything other than a rates cut, because it's actually going to be a lower bill. But that's another almost 18% or thereabout of CBD businesses. So now we've got nearly 40% of the businesses in our CBD that are either going to be paying more or saving $10. $10. That's not going to keep. I'm sorry, but if that's the difference of keeping your shop open or closed, you might just want to. We might want to rethink about our approach here. But who does this really benefit? Well, when you look at the actual funding, if you look at, there's about 12 businesses that are going to get about over 50%. They're going to save over $1,000 on their rates next year than they did this year, a lower bill. Those are the handful of people that are going to benefit the most from this. There's a lot of folks that are going to miss out, a lot of folks that are going to be paying more. And I just don't feel that this cost shifting maneuver really is the right way to go if we truly want to help businesses. Mojo's had to do a GoFundMe to keep their lights on last year. They struggled during COVID really horribly. Guess what? They will be paying 6.3, 6.4% more next year if we approve this. There's a business out in O'Connor that I talked to. This guy used to have over a dozen employees. It's down to just him. He makes metal custom trailers. He's going to have to pay 6.5% more. There are struggling businesses all around Fremantle. And if that's our motivation, I really think that we as a council could do better. I'm sorry that the discussion that we're having now is not about how we can do better, but about this specific proposal, because I would really be interested in seeing what we could do to help those businesses and also residents as well. So I just think that, you know, one, we all contribute to the things that happen in the CBD already in the city. This is not a exclusively funded thing. There are CBD businesses that are paying more next year under this proposal that the officers recommend. Nearly half of them are going to be saving $10 or paying more. It's not going to help them at all. And I think that there's a better way forward. And it would be just fund everything that we want to fund, do all the programs that we all want to do, but not give everyone the same rate on the dollar, but give everyone the same rate increase to pay for it. And that would be right around 5%. Everything above that 5% is a direct result of this 400K being shifted around to everybody else. So I think that would be better for our residents, for our businesses outside the CBD, and hopefully we can support this amendment. Thank you.
Rightio, so I'll put the amendment to the vote. All those in favour? Councillors Lorver and Thompson, and against? So that's not carried. Yep, that's voted. Thanks, Councillor Graham, we got you. All right, so we will go back to debate. Councillor Lorver, you had a second amendment. Councillor Pemberton, you also had an amendment. Maybe we'll go to Councillor Pemberton. Sure. And seconder for Councillor Pemberton's amendment is Councillor Thompson. Great. Did you want to speak just to that one? Thanks.
Just briefly, and I guess this is just to help provide clarity for officers going forward. This is something that has come up in conversation in previous budget discussions, as well as our sponsorship debate when we updated the policy recently. And it was primarily just around recognising that although it's been long done and widely kind of applied in terms of giving rates waivers or concessions to really great community facilities and organisations within our community, it's about making sure that that contribution, that waiver of rates, is acknowledged in some way. And I guess that's partly around transparency with our community, because it's essentially income foregone, and to ensure that that's kind of clear and transparent within our community, as well as the fact that in doing so, we are actually trying to help these awesome organisations within our community. And I think because it's always just been in the background and it's just been this random list in, you know, a page on our budget. There hasn't been a lot of awareness in that, and I think that has sometimes caused a little bit of some challenges and so on in terms of community members perhaps thinking that we're not doing anything to help these organisations, or when it comes time to discuss kind of other programs and projects and so on that we might collaborate on. It's just really around recognising that we do want to support our local community groups and make that transparent and accountable and, you know, everybody aware of it.
Thanks, Councillor Pemberton. Did anyone else wish to speak on that? I do acknowledge Councillor Pemberton for bringing this forward formally, because it is a discussion that comes up really quite frequently. It is hugely important that ratepayers know as well that we get behind a whole lot of organisations who are doing great stuff in the city, and that's one way. This is one way we do it, and we also sometimes give them money to do it, and community groups and various other things. So having a level playing field in terms of everyone acknowledging that support that they're getting from ratepayers is really important. So thank you. I'll put that one to a vote. All those in favour? That looks to me to be unanimous. Thank you. So back to the budget as amended. Councillor Lorver, you wanted to do?
Yeah, I'd just like to move my second attempt at trying to make what we're putting forward to the public and improving a little more, I guess, fair in my view. But one point I want to also bring up is that we do have a vacant land or vacant commercial differential rate, but that only applies to cleared land. It doesn't apply to like empty shops or anything. But what the Second Amendment would do, if it's approved, would basically see, instead of redistributing $400,000 or thereabouts from the CBD differential rate that's currently being collected, it would reduce that down slightly. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One is it would actually, oh, I'm sorry, should I have a seconder first?
Councillor Thompson seconded it for you.
All right, good. Sorry, I just started going. My apologies. And it would see a small minority of ratepayers in the CBD, about 2% of them, only see a rate rise of around 3.4%, and most other folks that live in Fremantle and live around these rates and live around the area would see a rate rise of only around 5.45%. So to me, it's still everyone having a rate raise. It's just not it's not as equal across the board as I would like, but it wouldn't see some, people with large properties in one part of our city having a lower rates bill next year. They'll still increase a little bit, just not as much as everyone else.
Okay, councillors, does anyone wish to speak on this one? All right, so I'll put the Second Amendment by Councillor Lorver to a vote. All those in favour? Councillors Lorver and Thompson in favour and against. So the remainder against. So that has also been lost. Okay, so we're back to the budget now as per the amendment, as amended by Councillor Pemberton. Did anyone else wish to speak? All right, I might just wrap up then. Yeah, Councillor, sorry, Councillor Hoffman.
Thanks. Yeah, and I won't speak long, but I did want to say and thank staff, particularly for the effort that goes into the budget process. So if we most probably, I think the first conversation that we had about budget this year was actually last year. It was in December in this room here where we first started talking about opportunities and the challenges that we were facing, and we must probably, in the end, threw everything out from that conversation because the world changed so much over that period of time. We thought that we would be close to seeing the back of COVID when we had that conversation, and things would have changed. The international landscape has changed markedly, and the ability for elected members and staff to sit together and work through what is a difficult and challenging situation, and to acknowledge the work that elected members put in as well, in additional time, effort and scrutiny on projects, ideas, and opportunities. I think it's a remarkable effort, and to also go to that point as well. This is my third budget since being elected as a councillor, and I just think this is the first this is the first budget where we've learnt to adapt to the changes that have been thrust upon us due to COVID, and the opportunities which come from this budget, I think are great for our community, and particularly even down to small things where people have contacted us during the year and said, hey, this park doesn't have a water fountain. We're going to be putting water fountains into parks. Hilton Park Reserve is going to be preparing and planning for significant upgrades to facilities. And even to most probably one of my and Councillor Lorva's harshest critics, we are going to be installing a new barbecue into O'Connor. So these kind of areas in which we're willing to invest in this budget, I'm really pleased that we are able to do so and achieve some of those outcomes that that we haven't been able to do over the last few years.
Thanks, Councillor Moughlin. You may have stolen a little of my thunder, but it was good thunder. Councillor Busick.
So we're having some response on the budget, are we?
So we're speaking to the motion.
The motion of the budget.
Yeah, not to an amendment.
Okay. Yeah. Look, I'm going to give a different perspective on the budget, and I'm going to give you reasons for my decision and how I'm going to go. That doesn't negate the effort that's gone into this budget. It doesn't negate all of the discussions that has gone into it over the weeks through elected member meetings, emails and questions and clarifications. So I just want you to be with me because it's a bit of a narrative. Often what we do with figures and budgets, we take them on face value, and often there isn't a story or a narrative which puts them into a context. So I'm going to be putting my response into a context of why I'm going to have difficulty with passing the budget. My first statement is to say that from what I have seen of the cash flow statement, it is not a balanced statement. A balanced statement to me is where income equals revenue. And this is where the context comes in. We have sold off income earning assets which have not been replaced in over a decade. That has a serious consequence when we talk about income and being able to afford basic services and community projects. Our income, over the last decade, our income earning assets have been sold off to pay for the Civic Centre project. The 2012 King Square business plan states that the total cost of the Civic Centre would not exceed $45 million. The Civic Centre total project costs are, and I've yet to be corrected, I say it's over $62 million. So there's an additional nearly $20 million that over a decade has gone into this building and into this project. But in addition to that, we have lost some serious income generating assets which we have not replaced. In the short term, you often don't notice that, but a decade on, we are starting to feel the pinch. There is another additional $2.5 million included in this budget. The project continues to cost the ratepayers because, in practical terms, the project's still not completed. Let's go back to the cash flow statement. The statement, there's a revenue of $86 million and our expenditure is $75 million. We have a positive net cash of $11 million. The statement shows that we're going to spend $27 million to pay for the purchase of property, plant and equipment and construction of infrastructure. Our repayments on borrowings is 2.6 million. The statement shows that we can expect to receive 13 million worth of state grants, subsidies and contributions. So when we do the figures, you can add the 11 million, the 13 from the grants, gives you 24 million. However, we need to take away the 27 million and the 2.6 million that we're going to spend on construction and infrastructure. There is a shortfall of 5.7 million. Now, I'd like you to understand why the Quarry Street sale is so important, because it's been a line item for 4.9 million. The figures shown in the cash flow statements are creative to some respect. The unpicking of the statement is that at best, if Quarry Street sells for 4.9 million, there's a shortfall of $800,000. The worst case scenario is if Quarry Street does not sell, then we have a shortfall of 5.7 million. And that's why I say that this budget is not balanced, and there is a trend towards financial unsustainability without the continued sale of city assets. I'd like to make a comment on heritage. We're all very conscious and we are all very proud of our heritage buildings. However, I want to remind everybody that the visitors that come to our heritage buildings and our city, that over the last decade, we have spent a paltry amount on the maintenance of this venue performing asset, or rather, income performing asset. In fact, the whole city and the various heritage spots that we have in our suburbs, we are an income performing asset. This year, the capital expenditure item on heritage is $58,000, which is 0.2% of the capital expenditure. 30,000 of the heritage budget will be spent on a heritage review. The Heritage Awards no longer happen, and I hear that this year's Heritage Festival has been cancelled. I couldn't believe that we'd spent $58,000. So I went over the line items. And it was a little bit difficult to tease them out because in some respects, some of the heritage investment isn't really the type of expenditure you would include in heritage. But nevertheless, I bundled together a number of line items, and at best, the spend on heritage is about 3.5% of the CapEx budget. Now compare this spend to what we're still spending on the Civic Centre of 2.5 million. That represents 10% of the CapEx budget. The King Square business plan stated that we would earn $1 million. The reality is that we are paying $1.2 million per year for the $20 million borrowed from the government, and we can see that the financial trend is unsustainable in the long term. This comes out of our consolidated revenue. Borrowings. I'm not going to go into great details here, but the one big surprise for me was I wasn't fully aware that we are paying back borrowings to the WA Treasury on our basic services such as drainage, footpaths, roads, etc. The budget shows current borrowings of 22.6 million as of June 2022. A few comments on maintenance. For over a decade, we have run down our investment portfolio, which was built up by generations of ratepayers. Our city asset base is about 400 million, and to just maintain these assets, we need to spend about 10 million a year. It is difficult to be precise on how much we spend because there is mixing of capital and maintenance buckets right throughout the budget. However, I will estimate that we spend about half. So I guess when you have a look at the maintenance, I think we can all have a look at our footpaths. I think there isn't a footpath that I haven't walked on in the city or in the suburbs that doesn't need not just some minor maintenance, but it needs to be pulled up and be replaced completely. Audited annual financial statements. This is really important. We are yet to have ours released and signed off by the Auditor General. In March this year, the draft annual financial statement was released. Our May financial statement reported that the capital works in progress has been 39 million, and yet the audited figure, that the draft one, I add, stated it was 52 million plus the contractual commitments. This is a big difference in financial reporting. This isn't a few dollars, we're talking of millions of dollars. It is why we need to have the signed off audited financial statements before the budget to make sure that our information, the take off figures, is valid and reliable. The one thing that has impressed me as an elected member in her third year is of the brain trust of our 13 elected members and the CEO. It can be pretty powerful. 13 individual people and our one employee, the CEO. It's awesome to see us at work at times because the differences in our points of view is what makes this council, it has the potential to have a look at new ideas, new strategies, to be able to stand back and say, why can't we do more for our city financially? However, we have not spent an hour during the budget meetings on replacing the sold revenue performing assets. We talk about it briefly, we mention it. We agonise over the fact that we know we're behind in our maintenance. We know that our community programs fall short. And yet we don't invest in that brain trust of 13 elected members and a CEO who could sit around and look at other ways that we can generate income. Because without an income generating assets, we will continue to do the same thing every year. We'll be apologetic, but we're going to produce a similar result. The King Square business plan and the underlying financial narrative of activating the city was flawed in 2012, in my view, and it is now still flawed in 2022. The opportunity cost to ratepayers is huge. How are we going to catch up on the maintenance of heritage assets and provide quality basic services to our ratepayers? When can we expect to bring the underground power to all parts of our cities? When are we going to provide zero rate increases like the City of Swan? When are we going to provide the required financial backing to our community sporting clubs and programs that make a real difference to our people at risk? We are still hanging on to a failed strategy of activating the city through buildings and developments that do not bring a net positive return to the ratepayers. And I've amply demonstrated that in the scrutiny of the financials. To pass this budget is a bridge too far for me because it would be an endorsement of a strategy that no longer services, if it ever did, the ratepayers of Fremantle. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lorber.
Thank you. Yes, I really support a lot of the things that are in this budget. Like I said initially, there are some really positive steps forward as far as fixing footpaths and doing things that I think we need to do as a city, taking care of a lot of different places around our great community. There's a few things that I don't like in there as well, but that's all part of having a big budget, I guess, and that's just fine. But it's really difficult for me to get past making a permanent change to the rates, asking everyone to pay more. So just really a handful of businesses in the CBD can benefit from not just this budget, but on into the future, in a way and in a time when we've got huge inflationary costs. We've got people struggling. We've got other businesses doing it tough all around the city. But yet some of the folks, like if you looked at the Herald just a month ago or thereabouts, there was an article in there, I'm sure most of you saw it, about um, the vinyl boom. You know, it says, well, COVID sent many Frio businesses into a spin. For those centered around old school turntables, it's shown to be something of a boom time. The Record Finder, a place that I go often, they were talking about how they've never done better business these past couple of years. They will have lower rates next year than they did this past year when this budget is approved. And meanwhile, my neighbor, who's a pensioner, she barely gets by. About $30 of her rates bill is going to be directly paying that cost every year from this year forward. So I know it's a small amount in the overall budget, and I know there are things in this budget that I really, really like, but seeing that the benefit from, well, the cost shifting, I don't know how else to say it, but as a maneuver, really just benefits a small number of businesses, mostly in the CBD. There's a whole heap of them that are going to pay more or benefit very little. And then I look at my neighbor who's $30 a year. Yeah, it's maybe not a whole heck of a lot, but when you're on a pension and you're struggling, every little bit helps. And I think that $30 going into the pockets of people who probably could afford it more is something that I really think is something that should have probably happened. So I don't think I can support the budget just because of that little bit. So I haven't quite got there. I'm sorry.
Councillor Groom.
I have a question, if I may. I'm wondering whether Councillor Busick is putting up an alternative motion. There was a lot of points tabled. On the one hand, a request for spend. On the other hand, a suggestion we don't put rates up. So I'm wondering, is there an alternative proposal that you're putting forward for us to debate? I'll just take it as a rhetorical question, but it is our job. Yeah, we've been through a process, and it would have been good if you feel strongly enough to bring something forward, as Councillor Lorber has, for our consideration.
Thank you, Councillor Groom. Councillor Jones.
Thank you. When I hear elected members talk about the history of this building, sorry, and the decisions made by the council in the past, which I was not part of, going back to about 2012, I think we need to think about where we would be now if those elected members had not made those decisions. We'd be sitting here in a decrepit building with a barely functional library, with no universal access, riddled with asbestos. Over there would be an abandoned cinema building with no tenants, covered in pink plastic, which is gradually falling off. Over there would be the Maya building, occupied by a couple of carpenters and some various artists and things. And behind that would be a Queensgate car park needing new lifts, $8 million spending on refurbishment, and barely functional. So that's the option, you know. If the council of the day had not made those decisions, that's where we would be. And I really want people who advocate that to tell us what the alternative was. What was the alternative? Sit here and watch Fremantle decay and rot and disappear, or take the very courageous and brave decisions they did to sell off assets, to invest in new assets, and to say we've sold off assets and got nothing instead. I mean, some of the logic is, if we don't sell off Quarry Street, we'll have a big debt. Well, we won't, because we'll still own Quarry Street. I mean, if you sell a house, you have some money. If you don't sell the house, you've got a house. You know, it's a complete misinterpretation of the budget to say that the ratepayers have spent all this money on this building and they've got nothing. They've got nothing for it except debt. And by the way, our debt is at the absolute lowest level of anybody in the world would want our debt. I don't know what the figure is, but it's tiny 1.9% fixed for the whole term of the loan, right? Who to not take out that debt would have been totally irresponsible of the council of the day. To not take out that debt and rebuild these facilities would have been a complete abrogation of their responsibilities.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Archibald.
Well, he stole my great story. The 1.9%.
Know how it feels.
Yes, it must be hard for you to wait to the last bit. But look, I'm always very happy for people to challenge what comes before us in this council. But to be honest, we've spent 6 months working on this budget. We have investigated many, many options in how we could improve revenue. It's only about half of this budget of this council that comes from the ratepayers. The rest is raised through revenue from parking, grants, fees, charges, you name it. Every effort is made and a good deal of work was done to try and improve every revenue source we could find. Fremantle can't be compared to the City of Swan or the City of Melville or the City of Coburn. Many of those councils have very big rate bases. They've got fairly new infrastructure in general. This is an old city. It has old plumbing, old footpaths, old roads. It's got old buildings, and thank heavens for it, because it's also a fantastic tourist attraction. None of those other cities have any of that, you know. So we need to look at what's good about down here, as well as what we have to deal with to actually have what we've got. And I kind of feel like it's time we started to step up and say, yes, we are struggling to pay for all the things we need to pay for in this city. But I wouldn't want to live anywhere else, to be quite frank. This is a fantastic city, and our residents are very fond of it. They do get behind it. Yes, we're all struggling with things like price increases, but if we weren't responsible and kept par with what inflation is doing, we would not have the funds to do a lot of the projects that we're talking about doing that our ratepayers want. Our ratepayers, I went back and looked through annual reports for the last 30 years, 40 years, something like that. And it is amazing what this city now does under its budget. Phenomenal. And the community asks for more and more every single year. This community is growing. It has aspirations. It doesn't want just its footpaths and roads fixed. It wants all kinds of other things to happen in the city. Its art centre, its this building, all the different things that we've got around us in Fremantle. If we said, all right, well, we won't fund any of that, we'll just go back to the footpaths and the roads and that kind of thing, there'd be an outcry. People, you know, we just can't do that. We've got to go forward. And the one thing, as Councillor Jones said, is I wasn't here for that decision. I might not even have agreed with the final outcome in terms of this building, but it is here. And the town is beginning to pick up. We're starting to see huge projects contemplated. We now have, 2,500, 3,000 new people working in the buildings behind us. There's all kinds of things beginning to happen. And an awful lot of people who want to come down here. People I know saying they cannot even afford to come to Fremantle anymore to live because it is so expensive. So, you know, I think we need to balance some of that up with some of our comments about the city. I totally support anybody investigating the finances, the scrutiny and all that sort of thing. But just for once, let's stop and look at how good the city is and what we're trying to do. And yes, we do need to do heaps and heaps more. We still have lots of things to fix up. But at least we've made one big step and it's going in a pretty good direction. So I totally support this budget. I really look forward to starting the next one, which will happen in about 5 months' time. and we'll see what we can scrutinise out of the next round and make it even better if we can. So I just wanted to make that point. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Archibald. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's disappointing to see a councillor not able to support the budget based on not supporting one small item in it, and I appreciate Councillor Lover's comments. So I wonder, just to make it a little bit easier, perhaps we could split it into two, so that at least Councillor Lover can give consideration to recommendation 1 and oppose recommendation 2.
Certainly a good suggestion. I will move one. Well, perhaps I'll just move 2 separately from the remainder of the points that are in the recommendation. I'll give Councillor Lawver a little time to think about that. Councillors, did anyone else wish to speak? Otherwise, I will wrap up. Okay. Yeah, so, I mean, firstly, I'll actually acknowledge the Deputy Mayor for his comments, and Councillor Moughlin. A lot of people wouldn't know who aren't on council chairs these very frequent elected member meetings that we have on budget and all sorts of other things, and it is a mammoth effort. And whether that's the managers who become involved in setting the budget, it's not just the directors, it's right down to the people who manage the parks area and the arts centre and all those different areas coming in and working with elected members, through to the directors who have to pull it all together. The team who actually had to put the budget together was made up of, I don't want to even think what percentage of people in that team were new this year, but it's been a really, really hard year for them. You know, we've had a lot going on, as we mentioned before, with the Auditor General. That's been certainly a long and extensive conversation with them, one we really look forward to concluding, with them right in-house, working with the very same team that has to work on our budget. So it has been an absolutely mammoth effort. The question was raised, when are we going to deal with some of these things? Well, the answer is now. You know, this is the work that we have done as a team to get to a point. And we're not rolling in cash. We're not a Melville or a Coburn who have thousands of ratepayers and very little to spend money on, it seems. We don't have huge reserves, so we have to put all this work into the budget process, and I think we do a really good job of that. So elected members have worked through that and, you know, asked questions if they haven't understood why something's how it is, and have come up with ways to generate income. I did a quick search, and when did we talk about ways to generate income? 13th of the 5th, 23rd of the 5th, I ran out of, I think 30th of the 5th. It was on all of those agendas. And which areas should be prioritised. And it changes year on year. You know, one year it might be heritage. You know, certainly when we did the town hall and the roundhouse in the same year, that was a very, very big percentage of our budget going to heritage. So we need to take that in context. I think if there was an overarching theme for this budget, for me it's around kind of getting behind the community. So we hear a lot from the community about things they would like to do, aspirations they have. We need to get behind and back those in. So if it feels as small as, you know, a change to the local playground, if you go there, you know, put a drinking fountain in Bruce Lee Reserve or whatever it is, if you go there every day, it's actually a change to your daily life. And that's what local government is absolutely about. We're tripling the efforts we're putting onto footpaths. Footpaths is also a bugbear of mine. I think you've got to love stuff like footpaths if you're going to get into local government. But also some big things that people will really notice, like the South Beach toilets, which for years has been a conversation we've had with people in the community who've said it's just not, they're not good enough, and they're not. And they need to be accessible, and they do need to be accessible. So there are some really noticeable things. There's visible changes that you will see out of this budget. There's also some other invisible changes, like starting to save up money so we can do the Hilton Park master planning work and actually create a really amazing sporting precinct at Hilton Park. We need to squirrel away some money now so that we have enough in a reserve to be able to do that work. Hilton Underground Power is huge. The fact that we're finally doing this has been something we have wanted across Fremantle for a really long time. The fact that Western Power are prepared to chip in more and contribute to this project, let's hope it goes really well and they just really want to keep going, because we would love to see it through some of the other areas and the opportunity it brings to increase urban canopy and all those kind of things that we want to do. And you know, what makes us unique? Our arts and culture, you know, getting behind things like the Biennale, which people talk about for years after it happens. So it's a getting behind budget. We're partnering with people, we're listening to what people want, and we're delivering on those things. No budget is perfect. There'll be things in this budget that throughout the year that we'll have to adjust, and that's why we have the processes that we do. So like any organisation, you know, if you've been on a board or you run an organisation, you know that through the year there will be budget adjustments. Our budget is no different, and we want to take advantage of any opportunities that come our way as well. So where we can partner with someone to do something good. At the end of the day, elected members and council are a team. We're not a government and an opposition. That's not how we function. and what you get out is equivalent to what you put in to these processes. So while Councillor Lawver might not have had a win tonight, I know from the effort and the commitment and the dedication that he shows to his work that over his years on council, he'll have plenty of wins. And we all know that too. We never get exactly what we want through these processes, but together we make really good decisions. So I will wrap it up. I intend to move 1, 3, and everything through to 1 and 3 to 1 to 3 to 13, but minus 2. So we've got to 13 now because I think we've split out in the amended officer's recommendation. Basically, I'm going to move differential rates separately in a nutshell. So I'm going to move, firstly, put to a vote everything other than 2 differential rates. All those in favour? And against? So Councillor Vusic against and everyone else in favour. And then I'll move the differential rates, part 2. All those in favour? Okay, so that's councillors. I'm just going to call this out. Graham, Groom, Archibald, Pemberton, Mofflin, Jones and Vusic. And Fitzharding for and against. Councillors Mofflin and Thompson. What? No. Yeah, you're right. Getting blurry. Councillors Lawver and Thompson. Thank you. All right. I think that's bringing us to the close of our budget meeting tonight. So thank you for flying with us. It's been a pleasure. It's great to get to the end of this process.